Celtics Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtics Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for the Boston Celtics. I'm your host, Justin Poulin. Joining me, as always, John Duke. And the off-season is not just the off-season for the Celtics, it's the off-season for everybody. The Cavaliers go down in short order, a complete sweep at the hands of the Golden State Kevin Durant-led Warriors, and now they're the bad guys, John, and they were bordering on it before, but they were so fun to watch, and honestly, I don't think there would be 1 ounce of hate coming from me for them being on top if they hadn't done the Durant move. Because they did the Durant move, it just makes it so easy to slot them right into the bad guys of the NBA. But if you think about it, had they never done that, they could have won 4 in a row for all we cared. I bet we'd all still be behind them. But that Durant thing just put the bullseye on them. Now everybody wants to take down the New England Patriots of the NBA.
Absolutely, they want to take him down. I mean, this is it, man. They are now, public enemy number one. I said this after the sweep was completed there the other night. LeBron has been the guy. He's been the bad guy. He's been the guy that we've all been trying to get at. But I think at this point now, there's no question. LeBron doesn't have the horses. He's not the king. He's the king. He's still LeBron. He's still the best player in the league right now. But his team isn't. It is not a contender. And even if, he goes somewhere else, we'll reevaluate at that point once that team's won something. But there's no way I see that this Cleveland Cavaliers team is going to be able to put him back in a place where he can contend, let alone with the Golden State Warriors, but with the Houston Rockets or the Boston Celtics of what we think that team will look like next year. LeBron, unfortunately, I'm not saying his reign is over. He's still a great player, but the days of his team being on top, they very well probably are.
I guess it depends on where he goes, and we'll obviously get to that in a minute. But first, how do you think the Celtics would have stolen a game? I mean, even with all the injuries, I feel very good about this roster, unchanged in the off season. Would love to see Marcus Smart come back. Talked about a lot of those topics on the last show, so I don't know we need to rehash them show after show. But I think this team obviously can compete with Golden State if they're 100% healthy as constituted this year rolling in next. I guess I'd say they bring Baines and Smart back. I feel pretty good about it. Definitely competing. But this year's version with the 2 big injuries, 1 game away, obviously wilted a little bit under the pressure in Game 7. Guys have been coming up big, just didn't have it in the tank, or, the moment overcame them. But if they had won that, gone into a serious underdog series with the reigning champs, do you think they would have stolen a game or two? How far do you think they would have gone against the Dubs, which are just, insanely talented?
It's funny that I don't know about you, but when I hear people say the Dubs, it's
got a negative, right? It's a negative connotation. So I'm totally 100% on board with the Dubs.
Okay, good.
But you're right. It's a golf term that we used in Maine growing up. We call them a dub or a duffer. You know what I mean? It's just
a dubber.
Right.
You dub around the house. You're just kind of, and the Dubs are like this high flying, high scoring team. No, I think the Celtics would have gotten at least a game out of that series. I think they could have gotten 2 games. Look at the help that LeBron
We agree
had.
They weren't going to win that series, though.
They were not going to. No.
Right.
No. They were not going to win that series. Getting 1 game would have been, amazing. Let's look at what the Celtics last year when they took a game from Cleveland, who were absolutely rolling over them. The Celtics took a game in Cleveland from them. Now, that Cleveland team's a lot better than, or I should say this Warriors team's a lot better than that Cleveland team was. But I felt like the Celtics clearly could have, I think they were a better matchup against Golden State than they were maybe even against Cleveland, as crazy as that sounds. That doesn't mean they're better, and I still think, Golden State still wins that series going away, but I think they get a game at least. They might have gotten 2. The point is that it's all of this year was really about next year, and it's about putting a shadow of doubt or a little bit of doubt in Golden State's mind that, hey, we still got these two other guys coming at you, and we took a game from you already. Maybe it doesn't give them a whole lot of pause given they're going to be, winning that series in 5 games or 6 games, but it would have been nice. And I think that's really all this, this whole season is really just about setting the stage for next year. I just felt like I was watching that series. I'm not sure if other Celtics fans felt this way or if you did, but it just felt like, yeah, this is nice, but it felt like just underwhelming, first of all, as a basketball series, despite whatever drama. But the Celtics, it was to me, it's all about a prelude to next year. And it really, this whole season, since 5 minutes in, has almost felt like a prelude to next year.
So with that in mind, would you rather have had the Celtics do what happened, right? They lose Game 7, or would you want them to have gone on to the finals and gotten swept in 4 games? Do you feel like that? And I wish Game 7 was a more competitive matchup, but you'd still rather have seen them get that Game 7. Again, they really kind of wilted, right? Except for Tatum's dunk on LeBron. But would you have rather had them be successful in Game 7 and get swept just because they made it to the finals? Or do you think that maybe losing that Game 7 saved them a little bit of embarrassment?
No, I don't think that at all. I think the more hurdles that you can cross, the closer you can get to the end. You're going to get that team that much closer the next time to doing it. I don't think it's, with going back to the first year Brad Stevens, was here, and they weren't good, but they were kind of spunky. And then they got the Isaiah teams, and they weren't good and shouldn't have made the playoffs, but they gave Cleveland what they had. The next year they don't do well against Atlanta, but they were clearly better. It just felt like getting over these hurdles is just really important as a team that's trying to build that culture. And I thought the more hurdles you can get through when you don't have any reason of doing them, all the better than when you actually have, all of those weapons at your disposal. And I thought, so you get through that Game 7, you teach those kids how to get over the hump, you vanquish LeBron. I think that's a lot in terms of confidence for the team. Oh well, it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, I think it still happened. I mean, we talked about it all year. They had grit. This roster had an enormous amount of grit. So now that there's been a couple of shows since the Game 7 loss, I've licked my wounds. I just wish it was more of an entertaining Game 7. I wish it went down as an offensive, up-tempo, and I guess they liked their chances in that half court. But a reminder, you can follow Celtics Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live, as well as your host at CSL_Justin. That's me. John is at CSL_Duke. The entire CLNS Media Network at CLNS Media. Facebook.com/CLNS fans. Download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Media in your app marketplace. And finally, the YouTube channel, where you will get high-definition, full-length locker room interviews. The Garden Report will be back next year. In the meantime, you've got the Round Table. You've got the Celtics Blog podcast. Bobby Manning is always at work getting it done, and especially with more time, with the post-game shows now out of the way for the off-season, I know we'll be seeing more and more there, and if you haven't checked out the Bobcast, make sure you do. So, John, fallout from this whole scenario with the sweep, right? Everybody is just so eager to get into the offseason. And I think once Cleveland went to the finals, they wanted to be something big, but I think everybody deep down knew that it was just going to be really tough for that Cleveland team to compete. So everybody, I think, was so anxious to just, let's get into the silly season. Let's start dreaming it up. Got that billboard picture of LeBron wearing Rondo's number 9, barf. And I posted on Twitter yesterday, that I really could not get behind a LeBron coming to Boston for a couple of reasons. One is, with the way I have ridiculed Ray Allen, it would be complete hypocrisy for me to welcome LeBron James with open arms coming to the enemy Celtics, especially the Celtics being the enemy in several different machinations of his career, right? All three stages, Cleveland out to Miami, back to Cleveland, just would be a completely unacceptable move and very Ray Allen-like going in. And now I get that he just beat the Celtics and it wasn't losing to the Celtics. Kyrie doesn't get the same criticism because, yeah, he may have forced a trade, but he didn't different in the trade season than it is in free agency with Ray Allen. But then the other reason is, and I saw Chad Finn kind of posted this and said, don't be afraid of LeBron to the Celtics, right? And he said, wouldn't be surprised if Danny would make said move if he thought it was going to make his team be better. That the loyalty is only there to a point, which is true. We saw that with Isaiah Thomas, as Chad astutely points out, after losing a sister and losing a tooth and just the complete and total difficulties that he had all through the postseason and still hanging in there and getting traded away from Boston. So with all that in mind, we know Danny's going to do what he thinks is the right thing for the team, but I'm definitely not afraid of LeBron coming here. I just kind of really don't even want him, let alone not wanting to look like a hypocrite.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much there, really. You know, there's a side of it of should Boston want him, and that's more complicated than I think a lot of people have made it, particularly over the weekend. You know, I mean, the idea
Boston should want him. The people
Well,
who run
no,
the team should
Go
want
ahead.
a talented player. No, that's all I'm going to say. They should want the best players on the team that they can get. Boston, the fan. So I just wanted to clarify your comment there. Boston as a fan base or Boston as an ownership group?
I think not even the fan base. I'm talking about the ownership group. You know, the guys running the team. I think there's questions there. I don't think it's as simple as you take the best player and you plug him in and you make it work. LeBron James is not just your average player. He's not even a Kyrie Irving. He is his own, you know, and, you know, he's it's merging companies. It's not like, you know, you're just like going to a team and you're going to be a good player on that team. You are accepting all that comes with LeBron James. You're accepting the hangers on. You're accepting, you know, Rich Paul and Mav Carter and all the insane attention. You're accepting the way in which he wants to run his team. His legacy is in some ways bigger than, or has been bigger than, the teams he's been playing on. What's the history of the Miami Heat? What's the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers? You know, everywhere he has been outsized in his influence, and rightly so. I mean, what is he going to listen to the Cavs management? Is he going to listen to Dan Gilbert? Hell no, nor should he. Miami is the one, though, I look at and I say the way that situation went and how he kept trying to get Pat Riley to fire Spoelstra and take over, and just over, you know, when he walked away, sure, Miami wasn't in shambles, but it was definitely shook. It was shook. You know, I don't think Boston in the condition
it should have been in shambles. I mean,
it should have been. Yeah. And you know, to what you're saying, I think that, you know, the influence and the import that you have to accept when you bring on LeBron James onto your team, it's more than just a big role in running the offense. I mean, certainly everything you do, this team is about whoever's open gets the shot. It's not about give it to the guy and get him the ball. That's the way LeBron, I mean, yes, he'll move it, but let's be fair. We just saw the series where he just over and over, back in. You're going to change your whole offense, your whole philosophy to have LeBron James there. I'm not sure the Celtics kind of want that from that end, but I'm not even sure in terms of what it means to the whole franchise. The Celtics have never had a guy like that. And it is a cultural issue within the franchise. I think that's a bigger issue almost than
the team
fans
culture
or anything else.
It's the team culture. It's, you know, it's kind of got a little bit of that Ubuntu kind of feel, the way that Brad runs the team. You know, nobody's bigger than anybody else, and we're all a unit. We live and die together, etc. All of that, and really, Al Horford was a big piece of that. That's exactly I know Brad was trying to develop that, and I know that the team had players that were like that before, but they didn't have any star players. The very first star player that they brought into this mix, and I get Isaiah was a star for a year, but let's be real, he wasn't a star before he came. So the first star that they really brought in and didn't develop on their own is Al Horford, who embodies this whole team chemistry, team culture, and it's something that really does not exist very easily in the NBA. So you do have to think that you're making an excellent point, John. Why would they want to mess with that? The other thing I'd say is, how do they even get him here? Because we've already had the debate on the last show about the lineups, right? So I said I want to see the same lineup that they started this season with and had for about 5 minutes, but Kyrie, Brown, Tatum, Hayward at the 4, and or interchangeable with Tatum, Hayward at the 3-4, and then obviously Horford at the center position. But they got to move some salary. But let's pretend LeBron winds up taking a pay cut, and they don't have to move in an exorbitant salary. Let's say all options are on the table. They still got an issue with starting lineup in that scenario. Not that you don't bump somebody like Brown out of the lineup for LeBron James. Of course you probably do, but that definitely would hurt the team culture given what these players did in the absence of their stars for the last, 20% of the season and into the postseason.
Yeah, no, you're right. It creates a shockwave that, there's going to be shockwaves from reintroducing Kyrie and Gordon Hayward into this team. I mean, I don't think we tried to kind of talk about that in the last show. I think you start figuring out what LeBron means in terms of everyone else, not even counting the players that you have to send out to bring him in. And I'm going to accept Kyrie Irving from this, just in the basketball sense of who loses time, who loses space. It just, look, no doubt it makes the Celtics more likely to win a championship in 2019. I don't think there's a question in my mind that if they added LeBron James for one of those star players on the team, that they'd be a better team and one more likely to win the championship. Not only because they don't have any competition in the East, but also they're better, But the window goes from this to this.
Right.
That's
the window
the
shortens. You lose your talent. That's why it's players like, Davis. When you hear the trade rumors, it's for somebody who, plays a position in need, who's an all-star talent, who's still young. That's really the rumors that get connected to this team because of that, what you just said, shortens the window. I think they want to build something that's really going to last, something that, can last underneath the cap, something that's replicatable with, drafting players. I think that Danny will move key pieces along the line here to get additional draft picks so that they has that resurgence of talent year after year to some degree. But really, again, I'm going to go back to the Chad Finn article with the Globe, but, he kind of says, and he said, that whole thing about look at what Danny's willing to do. And he kind of made the point of it's probably Hayward that goes out, which just seems crazy given the relationship with Brad Stevens and the fact that they never really got a chance to do that experiment. But, ultimately his salary would match up with something LeBron might want to see for the next 2 years. And then, you've gotten a little bit older. You've gotten better. And again, I'm completely against this, but you've gotten older, but you've gotten better. You definitely have a player who can close games. It's going to get calls, especially down the stretch. So there's some big benefits there. But ultimately you do kind of mortgage the future, like you said, because then you've got, LeBron probably for 2 years, maybe nothing after that. And Hayward's gone. And we just signed Hayward and would be able to keep him for a lengthy period of time. Now you keep Brown and Tatum, maybe there's a way to do that sign and trade and cut a little salary and it helps you keep Marcus Smart depending on what he gets as a restricted free agent. But, I don't see them moving Kyrie for LeBron. And so that really, and maybe it's Horford.
But don't they?
But
no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You think?
I was just saying, but don't they have to remove Kyrie for him? That's the thing. Look, we brought in Kyrie to be the new centerpiece, right? Forgetting for the fact that we think Jason Tatum is our Lord and Savior. I think that, Kyrie Irving was the guy brought in. He was the guy who was the new face of the franchise, the new centerpiece, the new guy that you're building around. And though there are some, I think, out there that still say maybe he's not a good enough player to bring me to the promised land, let's put that aside and just say he came here because he was running away from LeBron James. He was running away from being, he didn't want to be sunned by him. He didn't want to be his little brother anymore. And I don't blame him. He wanted to get away from it. You bring LeBron James here, first of all, never mind the Kyrie wanting to leave rumors, which we'll talk about later. But I don't think the Celtics, I don't think they can bring in LeBron and not send out Kyrie in return. And how much further ahead does that put you?
Well, if you're going to do that, then you're basically sending Kyrie back to the Cavaliers, which is a near impossibility. So now you're talking about a three-way trade as well. And then you get the whole awkwardness, like if they don't trade Kyrie, we're basically
Right.
Cleveland and Boston with some younger pieces and a little bit more depth. But why do we really want to recreate that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, they were good. I mean, that was a good team last year. I mean, they couldn't defend, no matter to save their life, but they were good. They were a good team. Yeah, I know. I think it's problematic. I just think in terms of situation, it probably is the most plug and play for LeBron. But I think in terms of what it means to the franchise, and then from his perspective, that Boston has been the obstacle. I mean, I think you could even argue it's been more than Golden State. I mean, you go back to 2007, you go back to 2003, his first
historically,
game,
right? Historically,
his first game, he and Pierce, Pierce spitting towards the bench, and that's 2003, man. That's like 15 years ago. His stuff with Boston started, and you want to go to 08, and you want to go, in the big game there, and you want to talk about 10 and him getting basically kicked out of Cleveland by the Celtics, reasserting themselves. And then, of course, all the stuff with the Heat, the Celtics, and even now, 3 of the last 4 years facing the Cavs in the playoffs. Boston is his biggest nemesis, and he's gotten Boston more than Boston's gotten him. But to come here to play, I think mentally there's a headspace you got to get into. I'm not sure he can get there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the team wants to gamble on the fans either, because it's such a mixed 50-50. I will be honest with you. We'll close it and just see how it evolves over the next couple of weeks. I would have a really hard time getting behind this team and really rooting for them if LeBron James was on the team. And it's purely an emotional thing. You know what I mean? But I would tell you that if they won the championship next year, it would definitely feel less sweet if LeBron James wasn't somewhere along the way in our path. He's almost so perfect of a foil for everything, to your point, back to 2003. I mean, think about it. Since you and I started doing this show, LeBron James has been the enemy. And to try to flip that, no matter how much older and more mature and how much more clearly I see the world, no, that's all a lie. I haven't changed a bit. But I will tell you, I haven't changed so much that I definitely don't want LeBron on my team.
We'd have a family meeting this past Friday when the rumors were starting to get a little bit more real. And I had to
did
say,
the boys lose it?
Listen, I'll tell you who lost it worse was my wife. She was like, "What? I can't root for him. That's crazy." They were, it's wild. It's really wild.
It disrupted your family. Shockwaves.
Families are being torn apart over this, folks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just, you can't make it up. And the thing is everyone's starting to like this Celtics team, and I think that's what makes it difficult. If they were, last year's team, it's a little bit easier maybe to make that jump. But when you've been through what the Celtics did this year, so many of the young players they've drafted come through, and you get Kyrie Irving, you get Gordon Hayward, it feels like they're just so much closer to where they need to be. And of course, maybe that's why, LeBron is even looking in their direction. But it's interesting. And the other thing is the timing. The timing of this is really interesting because if he's going to look at Boston, he's got to opt into the contract because they can't get him as a free agent more than likely, unless he's going to sign and trade. And that seems weird. So if he's going to opt in, this is something that's probably going to come together a lot sooner than later. maybe he will opt out and maybe he'll take meetings and try to do a sign and trade. But that just, he loses a little bit of control. He has a lot more control if he's basically opted into his contract. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right, well, we'll talk about Kyrie Irving in just a minute, and then we'll talk about the draft and, considering maybe we can sprinkle some Grayson Allen into your life, John, so that you can reverse the shockwaves that LeBron created and go, maybe there's two Dookies 2 years in a row drafted by the Celtics. But we'll tease that for the second half of the show. First, if you wear contacts, then you know how annoying it is to have to get a prescription year after year just to be able to buy more contacts. Simple Contacts is changing all of that by using technology to make renewing your prescription and buying contacts, well, super simple. And here's how it works. Using your phone or computer, you can take the Simple Contacts vision test in 5 minutes, literally from anywhere, and then a real doctor will review your test results in 24 hours and writes you a new prescription. Boom. A fresh supply of brand new contact lenses on the way to your door. No more appointments, no more waiting rooms, no more overpaying. Simple Contacts brings the doctor's office to you wherever you are, whenever you need it. And me personally, I am constantly traveling for work, so this is super convenient. I can barely schedule a haircut, let alone a vision test while I'm traveling all over the place. So this made it easy. I got my contacts in just a couple of days, and the prices are unbeatable. They have all your common prescriptions. Getting the prescriptions just $20, and those contact lens prices are very competitive. Shipping is free, and best of all, our listeners get $30 off their first Simple Contacts order. So, to save $30 on your lenses, just go to simplecontacts.com/CSL18 or enter the code CSL18 at the checkout. And I do have to mention that this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. You still need those occasionally, but it is the most convenient way to renew a prescription and reorder your contacts if your vision hasn't changed. Again, check out Simple Contacts and get $30 off by going to simplecontacts.com/CSL18 or just enter the code CSL18 at checkout. Give it a try and thank me later. Listen up, fellas. 66% of men lose their hair by age 35 and choose not to do anything about it until it's too late. However, it's way easier to keep the hair you have than to replace the hair you've lost. So, have you started to notice that receding hairline? Or maybe you're like me and your son finally spoiled the secret that you couldn't see on your own. That's right, the bald spot hiding in the back. Why is it that we do nothing when we can turn to science? And here's your chance. Our listeners get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now while supplies last. See website for full details. Go to 4hims.com/CSL2017. This would cost hundreds if you went to a doctor or pharmacy. That's 4hims.com/CSL2017. We are definitely talking about all kinds of Cleveland-related people. We've already spent the first half of the show talking about LeBron, and we've only had Kyrie in a Celtics uniform for a year, not even 82 games. And we're going to spend majority of the second half of the show on Kyrie and sort of this media, I don't want to say staged media, but it's loose. This media reports, or spin, I should say, media spin on Kyrie Irving and the contract status and just creating some drama there where, quite honestly, John, I'm not sure that it exists. The whole New York rumors seem old and outdated to me. And truthfully, I think if Kyrie thinks he can win a championship and he's happy with the team, he's happy with Brad, and they continue to advance, he'd be an idiot to leave. And I don't think he would. And I don't think it's all about money. I think he was sincere. Maybe not so much about the flat earth stuff, but I think he was very sincere about wanting to come to a winning culture, share, and grow his basketball prowess to another level. And frankly, he did an awesome job for most of the beginning of the year until they were having a hard time finding a go-to player, which may now have emerged in Jason Tatum.
They sure did. He did start off well, and there's nothing that's led me to believe that he's looking elsewhere, wanting to go elsewhere, doesn't find interest in being in Boston anymore. I mean, I feel like a lot of that stuff has been overblown, certainly. It started with the Gorman talk on the, when he was on Toucher and Rich, I think. Or no, I'm sorry. It was on one of the, anyway, he had the interview where, he was talking about, Evan Valenti, I think, on Celtics beat, perhaps. Anyway, he said, basically, I don't think there's anything, that he's set to be here, or that, there's nothing certain, which we know with Danny Ainge after last summer, certainly that isn't the case. But, you put that in, you pair that with the Mannix, Chris Mannix's piece where he says, Celtics are scared they'll lose him to New York, and then
which is interesting for Mannix, right? Because Mannix knows people in the front office, spent a lot of time around this organization. You see him on CSNNE all the time, and he's not really a fibber. He's not somebody who makes up, content, but yet he's riding this train, and I think that might be what's giving it so much legs.
Well, I think so. I think it's that time of year where, now what's going to happen with Boston, and Boston's the hot name, right? What's going to happen with Boston, and pair that with the stuff we talked about earlier with LeBron. And it's like, okay, well, what might happen, and anything that gets the New York media going and the New York, fans going about, we could get that star. And we all know that they have this weird fascination with point guards, especially New York area point guards, as Kyrie was growing up in Jersey. It's like it's tailor-made for clickbait, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think it's crazy. I think it's not a non-story, because we know Boston will move anybody at any time, but why trade him? Why?
Well, you got
why
Terry
would he walk
Rozier
away for the Knicks? That's just not going to happen.
We don't need him, right? We've got Terry Rozier. See, that's what that happened. Just so you know, you talked about your family this weekend. So this was the story that sent a rift through the male side of my family, my dad and my son and me. And Dad had, in true dad head fashion, is like, no, he's already casting Kyrie aside, and he wants Rozier. He's like, Rozier's got the better rebounds. Rozier's, this and we did go to the Super Bowl day game, where Rozier hit a huge shot down the stretch before Al Horford winds up winning it against the Trailblazers. A fantastic game, and Terry really did shine. And that game, even though Kyrie wasn't done yet, really was the playoff Celtics that was out on that floor that beat the Trailblazers that afternoon. So it's exciting, and I see where the dad head's coming from, in terms of, I see where he's coming from, because he always came from this place. Remember the Rondo hate? You remember the Rondo hate? I
have not forgotten. I've not forgotten that at all. Dad head and I were on opposite sides of that one, I think.
You were definitely on opposite sides of that one, but so I really don't think he's going anywhere, despite what my dad wants to see happen. My son flipped a lid. Like, he actually opened up his phone and created some notes, and he wants to rub it in my dad's face like 5 years from now. Like, there was serious record keeping going on during this debate. It was absolutely hilarious. But so anyway, I do think it's mostly manufactured. Do I think that the team is concerned? Of course they are. And maybe some of this is just getting leaked out because they want to put some pressure on the conversation with Kyrie on an extension. The problem is, he just can make so much more money if he waits it out, which means he's going to wait it out, which means anybody should be nervous when the player that you're trying to build your franchise around is going to go entertain other offers. And, you watch LeBron do it. Nobody's safe. And truthfully, the other thing is, Irving really doesn't have a lot of tenure by the time he hits that stage. Right? So he hasn't been here that long. I don't know that the loyalty's will be fully developed at that point. Hopefully it will to his teammates, right? But all it takes is a couple of his favorite guys to not be able to make the roster crunch financially. We don't know who he's close to with this roster, right? So sometimes that's all it takes. A couple of your favorite guys walk out the door and it's not the same place, and you hit free agency, and the next thing you know, you're going somewhere else too.
Well, it's a year, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen over this next year, and it seems like he and Jalen have a bit of a thing going. And I think, Tatum and he certainly with the Duke connections. And, I don't think that the Celtics are going to have to make a lot of decisions on either of those guys. So I guess in that case, they're in good position to not push him away. But I think he looks at himself as I'm the centerpiece. The hard thing though is we're trying to get in the psychology of him, right? Like we're talking about a guy who just spent, 30 minutes on the phone with Soap on Deb of the New York Times talking about flat earth and why it's not that he believes it, but he wants to talk about it, so people are talking about it.
Definitely makes you think he's unpredictable. That's for
You're
sure.
not, yeah. I mean, he walked away from LeBron and, of course, conventional wisdom is that you don't walk away from, playing with the best player in the world. But I think everyone who saw that a little bit deeper saw, he didn't want to be the little brother anymore. That's pretty clear. I don't think that's a difficult thing to understand. And yet, I think, maybe that was misunderstood by a lot of people. This, I think, is a little bit harder because he has 30 teams that he could pick and choose from. And, next year there will be more money available. I just don't think you leave a really good situation with, really everything perfectly set up around you like that. It just doesn't this isn't gold. This isn't Oklahoma City and Durant.
Right. If you can get max money in rings, that's where you want to be. And truthfully, all we've heard is the amazing fan base in Boston. So who doesn't want to play in front of that? I think as long as the Celtics give him the money he's looking for and don't ask him to take a haircut, he'll be fine. If they want him to take a haircut just because they're trying to keep the band together, I don't think agents and players really respond very well to that, especially that early in their career, especially a guy with knee injuries and a history there that may say the window for those championships and making that money is short. It's going to be hard for Kyrie Irving to view himself in that invincible young mode where, if it doesn't work out, I've got the rest of my career. You know what I mean? Like, to get my money, to get my paycheck. I'll get my rings now. And it usually works the other way around, right? Pay cut later, not pay cut earlier. So get your money, then chase the rings. That's how it works. And it's probably not going to be any different here. So as long as they pay him, I think they keep him. I do want to move on to the draft because we only got about 5 or 6 minutes left in the show. But Grayson Allen comes in, does a workout, so stereotypically an Ainge guy, right? And so, but here is the thing. He's really, when you look at the Duke players of past, he's kind of the JJ Redick, right? Role. He can shoot from the outside. He's a little bit better defender, a little bit more athletic. He killed the combine, especially when it comes to leaping, which is really funny for a guy who's so gifted athletically to spend the full 4 years, hit the senior year in college, and then go into the draft. This is kind of a rare one. Usually that guy is a sound baller, but not very gifted athletically. Usually the athletes go earlier, so that's what makes this one so funny. He's getting if the Celtics take him, they're taking him at number 27, which I believe will be his official age when they draft him. Every time I see that, they're going to pick him at 27. I'm like, what, 27 years old? It's just funny. When's the last time you had kind of that highly touted player? So, wait, again, gifted athlete and can shoot. What the hell is the issue here? Why wouldn't he go higher in the draft, and why didn't he go earlier seasons? Nobody would know better than you.
So he's 22. Okay, so let's clear that up right there and then. That makes him older than Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown. So he would be on the old side, as a rookie. He could have come out after his rookie year, his freshman year. They won, that was the year they won the championship. They were a really talented team. He was a guy who was a really key player for them in that run and made some big baskets. I think he had 20 in the championship game. I think the issue for him, athletically, he's gifted. He can shoot a little bit. JJ Redick really isn't the comp I would put him as, or compare him to. Somebody asked me today who was his comp. I think good J.R. Smith, Will Barton. He's a guy who can do everything. He can rebound a little bit. He can pass a little bit. He can shoot a little bit. He's athletic enough. So it's not like, yeah, he can do a little bit, but he's not great in any one area. He's got that kind of ability. But he's not like a great shooter. I mean, he's a good shooter, but not a great shooter. He's a little streaky. The biggest issue is his head. And that's, I think, you can point to the tripping incidents. You can point to, the issues, he had in terms of, I don't know, I guess off the court type stuff. Not the bad character guy, but being too competitive. Sound like an Ainge guy. But I think he also had an outsized role. I think he thought he was the finisher, and on a team that didn't have a point guard this year, Duke didn't. The last 2 years, really, he was asked to do a lot more than he should have been doing. With in terms of ball handling, he can do a little bit of that, but if you put him next to a point guard, he's going to be a lot more effective. Screen, running cuts, spotting up, driving closeouts. As a role player, he could be really valuable here. The problem
is, you really don't think
he's
a good shooter, though? I mean,
no.
He took 7.5 3-pointers per game and shot 37%. His sophomore year, he shot over 40%. And I get it. It's not the NBA 3-point line, right. But do you feel like, so with the comparison to Redick, do you think the difference is that Redick's just way better off the catch and shoot? Like how quickly he gets into his shot is the issue at the NBA?
Redick is a phenomenal shooter. I mean, phenomenal. He's just not that guy. He's not of that caliber. If I'm ranking like shooters, I'm putting like Redick, Korver, that type of, almost specialist, Grayson Allen isn't a specialist. He can do a lot of things. He can create off the bounce. He can drive the hole. He can drive closeouts. He can play make a little bit. He has more skills, more varied skills. He doesn't have one singular great skill. I don't think he's a singularly great shooter. I think he can shoot. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? Like, he's a B+. He's not an A. Still, you want the guy who he can knock down. He can hit those shots if he's open, but he's not an A shooter. You're not going to build your offense with him as a key part of it. But if he's your first guard off the bench, or maybe a shooting guard, your starting shooting guard is maybe your fifth best starter, you can be okay. You could make a career with that, and I think he'll be fine. It's about this. It's about what's between the ears. That's going to be his issue. Can Grayson Allen lock in, stop making stupid situations? He shot Duke out of the NCAA tournament. He shot Duke out of the ACC tournament. He just was taking bad shots instead of using the situation.
Is that where Brad kind of does an Evan Turner with this guy?
Dude,
you know what I mean?
We talked about this about Game 7, right? What happened there? You had Rozier and Jalen, and they're working the ball on this side when somebody needed to be moving the ball over to the right side and get the ball to Tatum and Horford. Allen hasn't figured that out. He hasn't figured out the right basketball play. He's been figuring out what his play is. I'm not saying he's selfish, but just understanding situation, understanding, who the ball needs to go to. He hasn't, his intellect hasn't picked up that. I don't care if you've been at Duke. I don't care where you've been.
So funny.
You gotta know those things.
Because here you are. Usually by this point in time, you're just pumping up all the Duke guys, but maybe you're reserving that for Wendell Carter. But if you can believe it, we've run out of time already, and we haven't even gotten to the other two much more highly ranked Duke players. Although we did talk about Wendell Carter last time, we just didn't have a chance to talk much about Marvin Bagley, who seems to be sprinkled all over that top 7 or 8 picks, depending on which mock draft you're looking at. So the draft is only 9 days away. We're going to have one more show. It looks like we probably will be doing a draft night show. More info to follow on that. But that is going to do it for this week's show. The broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Media mobile app as well. You can find us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. A heartfelt thank you for everybody tuning in today. And remember that you can support the show by subscribing to Celtics Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd love it if you gave us a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. And for staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media, Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Celtics Stuff Live.
Celtics Stuff Live.